Hey, what's up? Hello, everyone. Welcome to Fantasy Filmball. My name is Matt, and the Cannes Film Festival official selection was announced today. I'm here to react to it and give you some of my first takes, what I'm really looking forward to, and what I'm anticipating to be some of the best films at this year's edition of the Cannes Film Festival. This is going to be my first year going to the Cannes Film Festival. It's been a dream of mine forever, and I'm so pumped that I get to go. The full lineup has not been announced yet. A week or two from now, there's usually one or two films that get added late to the official selection, but we know like 95% of everything that's going to be here. That said, we are also missing the lineups of the sidebar festivals, namely Directors Fortnite and the Critic Week, which both of those run parallel to Cannes, but that's not the focus of today's video. This is the official selection. First off, we are going to talk about the competition. I put together predictions of what I expected to see at Cannes, what I wanted to see at Cannes, and there were quite a few things that did not show up here that took me a little bit by surprise. And the first one is Emmanuel. Big question mark. There are rumors that it was seen and not liked by the committee, but I'm not sure about that. It just seems like the film is aiming for Venice right now, but the thing that I've been predicting all year long with Emmanuel is that it would hit Cannes, it would win some big awards, and it would become the main international push of the year, the film from France that would then go on to the Oscars. And if it's playing at Venice, it becomes infinitely more difficult for that to happen. Usually the reason why we see international contenders coming out of the Cannes Film Festival and not out of Venice is because Cannes is uniquely positioned to really give a lot of prestige and a lot of recognition to this type of film. Something like Anatomy of a Fall could do amazingly well at Cannes and end up being a Best Picture nominee, whereas if it premiered at Venice, for example, I don't think would have gone anywhere near the Academy Awards. Venice prides itself at this point in time as being much more of a platform for Hollywood and a platform for awards season. So stuff that's meant to go on to be Oscar contenders often makes a pit stop in Venice, like Poor Things last year or The Banshees of Inisherin the year before. So all the air in the room is sucked up by these Hollywood movies. Whereas Cannes, yes, there are those high-profile Hollywood premieres. We've got Megalopolis coming this year, but it's not the center of attention, and all of these international films have the same amount of attention, and so something like Ryosuke Hamaguchi's Drive My Car gets the same level of platform as anything else in the competition. Something like Parasite gets the same platform as Quentin Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and that allows for it to gain footing, and then through the year, the buzz continues to grow. Whereas you premiere a film like that at Venice, Anatomy of a Fall, Parasite, yes, they're still going to be received well, but there's no room for them to grow out of that. And so with Emmanuel, that's my concern. You're going to say a counterpoint here, which is, oh, but Matt, Roma premiered at Venice. That was an international film. That became a contender. Yes, but that was an Alfonso Cuarón movie, and Emmanuel is Audrey Dwan. I don't really see an angle anymore for this film, and so it missing from Cannes this morning was pretty shocking to me, and it's not a good sign for its awards prospects going forward, at least from a Hollywood and Academy Awards standpoint, which is what this channel's about. I'm also surprised to not see the new Arnaud Desplechin film here, Spectateur, though I wouldn't rule that out as a late addition because Desplechin is always at the Cannes Film Festival. It had been heavily rumored that the film Those Who Find Me from the Georgian director Dea Kulumbegashvili, hard name to pronounce, sorry if I butchered it. It had been rumored that her film was meant to premiere at Cannes, but it's not in the lineup. A little bit surprised about that because that seemed like one that I was leaning towards potentially being a big international feature contender coming out of Cannes. There was also a lot of rumors around Kiyoshi Kurosawa's French remake of his film Serpent's Path, which has a great French release date and is just somehow missing from competition. There's also no Liu Yi, no Apakat Pongwiresethakul. There is no Justin Kurzel here, who I assume he's bringing his film The Order to Venice as one of those sort of Hollywood films. But yeah, some contenders that I really expected to be here, which just are not. So the question is, what is here? And we're first going to start off with the expected films, the films that I definitely had on my radar and was saying, yes, these are going to Cannes and they are going to be in competition. And the first one was announced a few days ago. It is Francis Ford Coppola's Megalopolis. I have a full 30-minute video talking about the screenplay for Megalopolis, giving my sort of expectations for what this movie is. So if you haven't seen that video, go check it out. I'll go much more into detail in Megalopolis there. This is certain to be a film that will polarize the Cannes audience. Expect reports from newspapers talking about a 15-minute standing ovation, as well as being booed by a large portion of the audience. I think it's going to be one that gets big reactions, both positive and negative. But it's certain that people are going to start predicting Megalopolis as the Palme d'Or winner, but I think that's really unwise because there's a massive uphill battle that American films have to fight to win the Palme d'Or in this day and age. It just doesn't happen that often at this point, and yet every single year it feels like because we are Anglophones, because we exist in this sort of Hollywood bubble, we always expect the American films to be the ones that win. Like back in 2019, everyone was certain Once Upon a Time in Hollywood would win the Palme. That's just not how these festivals work. And Megalopolis is going to struggle a lot with a jury system. In a system where people have to agree on what the winner is, a polarizing film is not an easy one to choose. If anything, it could win the jury prize often being for interesting, exciting, boundary-pushing films, or it could win the Best Director prize. The film that I've been predicting to win Best Picture for a bit, The Apprentice, is here in competition as well. Ali Abbasi's Donald Trump biopic only wrapped production in February, but they miraculously have the film ready 2 months later. This is one of my most anticipated films of the festival. Ali Abbasi is a filmmaker that I think is incredibly interesting with Holy Spider and Border. And while this one seems like it will certainly polarize American audiences, I think that European critics and international critics are going to be much more overwhelmingly on the film's side. This reminds me a little bit of how Fahrenheit 9/11 won the Palme d'Or in 2004, beating Old Boy, and it won for the way that it criticized the George W. Bush administration because the French and the Cannes jury wanted to make a political statement. There is a possibility, an angle that history could repeat itself, and this could take a big prize, but I don't think that's likely. It's not worth predicting based on the unlikelihood that somehow the jury could all say, yeah, let's stand together and make a statement against Donald Trump, but it's worth acknowledging the possibility because there is precedent for it. Kinds of Kindness, the new film by Yorgos Lanthimos, has been confirmed to be here as well. We do have a trailer for this film too. It's an anthology film of 3 different short stories that have been described as a man without choice who tries to take control of his life, a policeman who is surprised when his missing wife returns home as a completely different person, and a woman who is determined to find someone with special abilities who can become the leader of a spiritual organization. This to me feels a lot like last year with Asteroid City, or back in 2021 with The French Dispatch with Wes Anderson. It's really compelling to predict a filmmaker like Wes Anderson or Yorgos Lanthimos for prizes because, again, we're Anglophones, we love him, we're familiar with his work. The Oscars have gone for even just as recently as this year, Poor Things. We have seen him get awards recently, and so it's really compelling to predict that, but Cannes doesn't work like that. This film's likely going to go home empty-handed, but it's going to have strong reviews, and it's going to have strong audience reception. It's just not the type of film that's going to pick up a Palme or something else from the festival. Andrea Arnold's film Bird is one of the films that I'm most excited for, especially now hearing the description of the film. It sounds different, it sounds unique, and this would be my early pick for the Palme d'Or at the festival. I'm a huge fan of American Honey, and Andrea Arnold has 3 jury prizes from the Cannes Film Festival, but has never won the Palme, and I think this could be the film to change that. Bird follows the father-daughter relationship between a man named Bug, played by Barry Keoghan, and his 12-year-old daughter, who has a friendship with a bird. And The Bird is voiced by Franz Rogowski. This is the film that Barry Keoghan dropped out of Gladiator 2 to be a part of. I had no idea this had some fantasy elements, and it sounds like it could be a mix of Andrea Arnold's classic kitchen sink realism mixed with this sort of magical realism element that could really elevate the film and bring new dimensions to the work. This, like I said, is my early pick for the Palme d'Or. I can really see a Greta Gerwig-led jury going for a trailblazer like Andrea Arnold. Sean Baker's Anora was also very widely expected here, especially because it was just announced that the film will be releasing in theaters in the summertime, and usually when films are prestige and they're releasing in the summertime, again, like Kinds of Kindness, it just feels like they are going to Cannes. There are not a lot of details about Anora yet, but we know that it's a comedy set in New York City following the lives of two sex workers. I can definitely see a lot of people wanting to predict this for the Palme simply because of Neon's track record and the fact that they have won the past 4 Palmes in a row. But I don't think it's likely that this one takes it. If Neon gets another Palme, it's because they purchased something here like Bird, which is not A24, or Neon could buy something else, or Neon just loses, because they can do that too. David Cronenberg is back at the festival with The Shrouds, which has been described as a bit of a eulogy, a tribute for his recently deceased wife. The film is about a businessman who invents a machine that allows him to communicate with the dead. Seeing as this is going to be a very deeply personal and meaningful film from Cronenberg, I could definitely see this making a huge impact with a jury and with critics. I could see him ending up landing a prize with this one, likely not the Palme. It feels like this is going to be a little too weird and alienating in the way that David Cronenberg films often are, but I could see it taking director, the Grand Prix, or the screenplay prize. Jacques Audiard's second English language film is here. It's called Amelia Perez. This one stars Zoe Saldana, and Saldana plays a lawyer who helps a cartel leader retire and embrace their identity as a transgender woman. Audiard has won the Palme in the past for his film Deepan, and this one is not sounding like a Palme d'Or winner to me. It really depends how the topics at hand are explored, but from a distance, I would say that the narrative to award Carla Sofia Gascon the Best Actress prize is too good to resist, as she would be the first transgender woman to win this award. So if the film is good, and if she is good, I feel like that is all but a certainty. I was also expecting to see Paulo Sorrentino's new film Parthenope here. He has a history with Cannes, so his inclusion was definitely expected. As an Academy Award winner for The Great Beauty back in 2013, Sorrentino seems like the type of filmmaker who is overdue to get some recognition from the Academy Awards in major categories. He could be the international contender that we get each year. And there's not much here about a plot synopsis describing a film that follows the life of a woman from the 1950s to the modern day, and it takes place in Naples. Gary Oldman has a bit part in it, but the film is mostly in Italian. It's undoubtedly going to look beautiful, as all Paulo Sorrentino films do. I'm going to consider this one to be a prize contender, and if it wins a prize, I'm definitely going to keep this in mind as a potential awards player later on in the year. We also have the new film from Kirill Serebrennikov, which is titled Limonov. I was surprised to see this film here because Serebrennikov has 2 films that are ready to go this year, and I was expecting his French film, The Disappearance, to be the one selected, because I had heard rumors that Limonov, The Ballad of Eddie, was ready last year and was rejected by Cannes last year, and that this year they were going to play The Disappearance, and they were going to take Limonov and play it out of competition. I was definitely expecting that, and so I'm a little bit surprised to see this one here. This is Serebrennikov's first non-Russian film. It's an English language feature, and it stars Ben Whishaw in the lead role. Serebrennikov is a really, really good filmmaker. His films are theatrical and beautiful, and the camera work just flows in this beautifully expressionistic way. However, traditionally his screenplays are always weaker than his filmmaking, than his direction. So I'm going to say this one is a contender for director or nothing at all. The final film that I expected to see here is The Grand Tour by Miguel Gomez. He's never been in Cannes competition before, so this is a first for him. I've never seen a film of his, but I do have a DVD of Taboo rented and ready to go, and I'm really looking forward to diving in. My understanding of Gomez as a filmmaker is his films are very slow, often have a little bit of a fantasy element to them, and they're very cerebral. They are the type of films that win prizes at festivals, but definitely not the Palme d'Or. I could see him in the running for the jury prize or even for a special award. Now to get to a few films that I had heard of before, but I was surprised to see in the lineup today. I had heard a lot of whispers about Paul Schrader's new film, Oh Canada, making the lineup, but I was definitely not expecting it, especially because Paul Schrader is not a Cannes regular. His films normally go to Venice. For example, like First Reformed, The Card Counter, Master Gardener recently have all been Venice titles, and even going back, Paul Schrader has only had 2 films in the past play the Cannes Film Festival. Potentially the fact that he's here in competition at Cannes means that this might be a special film from Paul Schrader, but he's one of the most hit or miss filmmakers in the game right now. First Reformed was very good, The Card Counter was all right, and I thought Master Gardener was not good. And so I don't know what to expect from this one, but it tells the story of a documentary filmmaker who fled America during the Vietnam draft and now lives in Montreal, and it focuses on an interview as he is dying with cancer. But like I said, I'm never one to bet on Paul Schrader. He's so hit or miss. Let's wait and see what the reviews say. But hey, shout out to Canada. We have 2 films in competition, being The Apprentice and The Shrouds. And we have another film that references us in the title. So banner year for Canada in Cannes competition. There's also Karim Aynuz's film Motel Destino. I was really surprised that this film was ready in time, especially because Aynuz just did a very rare thing where he has back-to-back films selected in competition at Cannes, because last year he had Firebrand, which was a big flop from last year's festival. Aynuz is a really interesting filmmaker, someone who I think is very kinetic and has this sort of raw energy to his films. He's got a very Todd Haynes kind of approach to filmmaking, and I'm really interested to see what he does with Motel Destino, especially because this film brings him back to Brazil. It follows a group of rebellious youth, and the synopsis doesn't really give us a whole lot more than that, although apparently the film is very sexually explicit. Another film I'd heard about and was kind of floating the idea around, but I was expecting to go out of competition, is Christophe Honoré's film Marchelo Mio. It feels much more like an out-of-competition film. It seems to be a bit of docu-fiction where people are playing themselves. The film follows Chiara Mastroianni, who is playing herself in the film. She is the daughter of famed actors Marcello Mastroianni and Catherine Deneuve, cinema royalty, both of them. So the film follows her as she feels pushed to fill the shoes of her father, and she begins to dress up like him, and she changes her identity to become her father, demanding people call her Marcello, and going on set pretending to be her father. It sounds like a funny film. I don't know where they're going to go with this concept, but it's definitely one I'm interested in, although it feels like it could be a little bit minor or a little bit too much of an inside joke within the film community. I had heard rumors that the new Jiazangqi film, Blown by the Winds, was supposed to go to Venice, so I was really surprised to see it show up in the Cannes competition. But this is the only East Asian film that is in the competition lineup this year, although I expect that to be fixed when the next films are added to the lineup. Jiazangqi has had a lot of success at Cannes in the past, but he's never won the Palme d'Or, and he's a type of filmmaker where I feel like one day he's going to hit and win the Palme, but I don't think it's going to be for this one. It sounds a little bit propaganda-y, and I expect more from Zangqi. I don't think it will be the way that it sounds right now, but that synopsis is not doing anything for me. That said, if this does win the Palme d'Or, or down the road, if Jiazangqi ever does win the Palme, he will not be an Oscar contender. He's not the type of filmmaker to, although he totally makes sense to win a Palme. And now, let's talk about some of the films from today's announcement that I had literally never heard of before. So these are big surprises to me, the films that I am now eagerly anticipating that literally like 6 hours ago, I didn't know existed. The first film is Coralie Farjat's The Substance. Farjat directed the very, very bloody film Revenge a few years ago, and apparently The Substance is even more bloody, being described by the Cannes Film Festival director Terry Frémaux as a film that feels like there's so much blood that it's going to pour out of the screen onto the audience. This is likely to be a massive midnight cult film hit in the United States. And its inclusion in the competition lineup is very, very interesting. The same way that Titan being in competition in 2021 was very interesting. If something as weird or gory as this can make it into competition, there is always a reason, especially from a filmmaker who only has one other film under her belt, which sounds, again, very familiar to Julia Ducournau with Titan in 2021. Now, here's a film that I am so excited for. All We Imagine as Light. This is the first Indian film to be placed in the Cannes competition in 30 years. The film is directed by Payal Kapadia. The synopsis of All We Imagine as Light follows two women who go on a road trip to a beach town and find a forest there that becomes a space where their dreams begin to manifest as reality. I have a feeling that this could be our major breakout of this year. Kapadia seems like a very interesting filmmaker whose works are going to speak to critics and very highbrow audiences, and the synopsis of this one also sounds like something that could be very interesting in a fantasy type of way. I feel like we're in an era where a film like this could be our Oscar contender from this year, because in a post-RRR world, I think both critics and American audiences are going to be more open to Indian films. And with the prestige of a Cannes selection, this could fit right into the same path as Anatomy of a Fall, or The Zone of Interest, or Triangle of Sadness. If Neon picks this one up, watch the hell out. And if Bird does not win the Palme d'Or, this is my next in line. Beating Hearts is the new film from actor-director Gilles Lelouch. It follows two high school sweethearts who are separated by prison, only to be reunited years later. The film is 3 hours long, though. And if there's any film in this selection where I'm like, that doesn't need to be 3 hours long, it's this one. This does not sound like it needs to be 3 hours long. I have heard great things about Gilles Lelouch's previous film, Sink or Swim. This sounds like it could be a major crowd pleaser of this year. It's likely not going to be an award winner, but it does sound like it's going to be a very solid movie. Diamant Brut, or Diamond in the Rough, is the rare film we get from a debut director. This is a first-time filmmaker, Agatha Reidinger, making her feature film debut in competition. Often this means that the filmmaker is doing something really special, something really that stands out. That said, last year we did have a debut director, Ramada Toulaisi, who made Banel and Adama. That film was nothing special, and it kind of got a lukewarm reaction at Cannes. But still, we always have to wonder when there's a directorial debut in competition. Gotta wonder why it's there and not in the category Un Certain Regard. And the final film in competition, the final of 19 films, is The Girl with the Needle, which is directed by Magnus van Horn, a Swedish director, but this is a Danish film. It's a period piece set in 1920s Denmark. Magnus van Horn is someone who's pretty new on the scene. He's only made a few films before this, but this one could be one to watch, because again, just like the previous film, this could have easily been in Un Certain Regard. So why is this one here instead of there? That makes me very intrigued. It makes me wonder if there's something special about it. So that is the whole competition lineup, but it is not the whole festival. Like I said earlier, my win prediction is Andrea Arnold's Bird. And if it's not Bird, I think it's going to be Payal Kapadia's film All We Imagine is Light. That's my runner-up right now. I'd say if we're looking at Oscar chances, it's obvious that Megalopolis and The Apprentice are the ones with the best chances. And then after that, it's a toss-up between Bird, All We Imagine is Light, and Parthenope as the potential international slot that we often get coming out of Cannes. We have spent enough time talking about the Cannes competition. Let's talk about some of these other sections. First off, let's talk about Un Certain Regard. This is a very interesting category because it's really difficult to see films that are exciting here because we don't know these filmmakers. These are oftentimes first or second time filmmakers, and they are not on our radar yet. A big rule of this category is you can only be selected in Un Certain Regard 2 times in your career before you have to go to the other categories, meaning either competition or one of the out of competition sections. Here are some films that, based on their filmmakers or based on their ideas, these are standing out to me right now. The first one is The Shameless. This is another film from India, just like All We Imagine Is Light. And again, I'm intrigued to see Indian films in the main selection, as other Indian films in the past have often been relegated to sidebars like out of competition, special screenings, or director's fortnight. The Shameless is described as a Shakespearean love story, which definitely has me quite curious. There's also Who Let the Dog Bite, which sounds like it could be a real standout just based on the premise. It follows a lawyer who is tasked with the job of defending a dog who has bitten someone from the death penalty. Then there's the film Black Dog, directed by the Chinese director Guan Hu, probably the filmmaker in Un Certain Regard who has directed the most films. He has 16 credits to his name, but all of those films have been studio blockbusters, action movies in China, and none of them have played festivals. Suddenly being selected in Cannes Un Certain Regard, that's really interesting to me. It makes me feel like this film's going to be different. It might be an action movie in some way, but it's going to be doing something unique and potentially establishes this director as an auteur and not just a studio filmmaker. The Village Next to Paradise is a film from Somalia directed by Mo Harawe. His debut is one that I'm definitely anticipating. He has made a name for himself in short films, and now he's here. The plot details are really vague at this time, so I don't know what it's about, but I'm definitely excited. A film that was heavily rumored for competition, which is now here in Un Certain Regard, is Roberto Minervini's The Damned. Seeing how low-key his other films have been, I thought it was kind of odd that he was rumored for competition. It made much more sense that he would be in Un Certain Regard, and so here he is. This is an Italian Western movie set in Arizona in the year 1862, and I don't know about you, but I am all for the revival of the spaghetti Western. The film On Becoming a Guinea Fowl was just purchased by A24. There are no plot details about this movie yet, but you just know being acquired by A24 the day of the announcements, that's always worth mentioning. My Sunshine is a Japanese film. It's a sports drama about figure skating that follows two kids who hate each other and have to bond as they prepare to enter an ice dancing competition. The film Armand is directed by the grandchild of Liv Ullmann. The film isn't sounding that interesting to me, but it's worth mentioning because cinema royalty, Liv Ullmann, and now her grandchild is directing a movie, so yay Nepo babies. Now we're moving over to the Cannes premiere category. This is a category that has been criticized in the past for just being a way that the film festival can say these films were not important enough to be in competition, but they're from directors who are too big to be in Un Certain Regard, and they're not mainstream enough to be out of competition. So these are just films that should have been in comp, but weren't for some reason. So here we have Misericord by Alain Guiraudi. I expected this film to be in comp, so I was a little surprised to see it here. It made me feel a little bit like this might not be as strong. The same way I felt about Everybody Loves Tuda, the new film from Nabil Ayouch, perhaps the most famous or important filmmaker from Morocco these days. His last film was in competition, and I expected this one to be too. And it's really weird to see that there are no African films in competition this year. The new short film from Leos Carax is here. It's titled It's Not Me, and being 40 minutes long, it makes sense to be in the Cannes premiere lineup, just the same way that Pedro Almodovar's Strange Way of Life was last year, because it's not long enough to be in competition, and it's too big of a filmmaker to be in the Cannes short program. Then there's also the new Rithi Pan film, Meeting with Pol Pot. Rithi Pan is an interesting case because he used to be a Cannes competition mainstay, but in recent years, he has really been at Berlin most of the time, or at Venice. He has not really been at Cannes in quite some time, and it feels like he doesn't hold the same weight as a filmmaker that he did 20 to 30 years ago. But giving him a Cannes premiere selection makes it feel like in a few years, he could maybe be in the Cannes competition again. Now to talk about the out-of-competition lineup, I am not going to touch on this too much because you already know about Furiosa, you already know about Horizon, Chapter 1, An American Saga. I don't need to talk about those. Hollywood movies are not what Cannes is about, and I don't really care. I will talk about Rumors, though, because Rumors is the new film from Guy Maddin and Evan and Galen Johnson, all maverick filmmakers of the surreal and the weird from Winnipeg, Canada. Guy Maddin makes some weird movies, but this weird movie has a cast that is absolutely stacked, including Cate Blanchett, Alicia Vikander, and Charles Dance. And so to see someone go from making weird art pieces to a Cate Blanchett movie, that is super interesting. This film sounds like a major oddity, but it's one that I'm definitely going to see at the festival. In the special screenings category, we have The Invasion, the new film by Ukrainian director Sergei Loznitsa. He's a regular at Cannes and has been in competition in the past, so I am a little bit wondering why this wasn't in competition. We don't know a whole lot about this movie, but I will say I would write this in as a certainty for Ukraine's submission to next year's Oscars. There's also a documentary in special screenings from Raoul Peck. This one's titled Ernest Cole Lost and Found. There are not many documentaries in the Cannes selection this year, so this one really stands out to me. It's about a Black American photographer and how after his death, 60,000 of his film negatives were found in a vault in Sweden. And it's just tracing the history of this photographer and his importance and rediscovering his importance all these years later. And lastly, the Cannes Midnight section is not great. It's never great. It's always confusing. Why do you choose these movies as midnight movies? They are not midnight movies. What are you doing? TIFF does midnight movies right. What are you doing with midnight movies? Anyways, the only one catching my eye in this lineup is The Balconettes, which is the debut film from actress Noemi Merlant. It feels really odd for this to be a midnight movie, but I'm here for it, I guess. And like I said earlier, we still have yet to hear about the sidebars like Director's Fortnite, like Critics Week, but I'm hearing rumors that the new Matthew Rankin film will be in Director's Fortnite. Matthew Rankin made one of my favorite films the past few years, The 20th Century, which I caught at TIFF Midnight Madness years ago. So I'm eagerly anticipating whatever he does next. And I'm also looking forward to just seeing whatever else is going to be in these lineups. Director's Fortnite often has some of my favorite films at Cannes. And that's it. That's my full roundup of all the films in the official selection at this year's Cannes Film Festival. I hope that I gave you something to be excited about, because I know that I sure am excited to go and experience all of these films and discover much more about them. So stay tuned to this channel. I will be releasing lots of reviews for films at the Cannes Film Festival, as well as the Cannes Parallel Challenge, in which Arno and I will be discussing previous features by each of the directors in competition for this year's Palme d'Or. But as always, thank you so much for watching. My name is Matt, and this has been Fantasy Filmball.